All right, good afternoon, class. This is chapter 8. Chapter 8 is entitled Political Culture and Participation. So, what is political culture? It is a shared belief concerning the relationship of citizens, which is us, to our government and to one another. We have values that are shared. We have beliefs about ideas of what we believe to be true. So, a value is a shared idea about what is good, and a belief is a shared idea about what is true. And those are that's what makes up our political culture. So just over time, things have changed. When America was first formed, it did bring over some of the liberalism from the 18th century, concerned with an aristocratic government, creation of inequalities, and a class system was formed. And we probably still have that today. Not probably, we do. Natural rights were introduced, and those rights was that rights of all people to dignity and worth. That is what we were founded on. Government cannot interfere with the rights of people. Well, that is interesting because I think we first have to define what we mean by right. Individual liberty, right to act, believe, or express oneself as you wish. That is an individual liberty. It is a widely held political view, and that we believe that individuals have rights and responsibilities. That's the second part of that. You have a right, but you also have a responsibility. So some of those that were part of the initial onset was Thomas Jefferson, John Locke, Adam Smith, Jean-Jacques Rousseau. They were part of what our political liberty came to look like. Government should protect the people. In an economic freedom, capitalist individual can make economic decisions without government interference. Well, I agree with that. And we are a capitalistic society. And it allows people to create businesses. We do know that the greater number of people involved in their own self businesses, the greater the nation would be. But government has to sometimes promote ideas for our private businesses so that they are not overtaking what some of our smaller businesses are trying to do. So in the plight of equality, there's a thing that says Thomas Jefferson wrote this in the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal. So that is something that we can talk about. I'll put out a discussion question maybe. Or maybe an extra credit question about whether or not we believe all men are created equal. Are they created equally? And then are they treated equally? And I think those are two different things for you to think about. Political equality, that means all laws should apply equally to all. One person is not better than another. And what we're finding in this political climate and in this administration, that's just not the case. You can say a lot about previous administrations, whether you're Republican or Democrat, but there's no way you can say that the amount of things that have happened in this administration is normal and that any other president would have been able to get away with it. There's no way you could say that. And if you do say it, you're not being honest with yourself. Equality of opportunity. This means that we eliminate those artificial barriers so that everyone can have access to success. And this isn't a value that is accepted throughout. So it's not that I'm taking something from you. I should have the same access as you to be successful in life. Now, what I choose to do with the access is on me, but I should not be denied the access of opportunity. All of our results, equal sharing of income and material possessions, regardless of one's ability, talent, or life's work. That is called the equality of results. And what is that? They talk about the Robin Hood model, where you take from the rich and give to the poor. Some say this is morally wrong, and that equality of opportunity versus equality of results. I don't necessarily think that it's an equal sharing, but I do think everyone has a part to pay and play in how we take care of one another. I do believe that. I do believe that we have to put more into the system so that those that don't have as much are well taken care of as well. So during election time, you always hear about income and whether or not people are making enough money, which most people that work minimum wage would tell you that they're not. So you have this thing about whether or not there should be a minimum income level, and whether or not there should be a certain level that no one should go under. If you're a family of 4, poverty for you is around $18,000-$20,000. What are you doing with that as a family of 4? You're barely surviving is what you're doing. And so it's not that the Americans don't want to set an upper level. It's not that we want to put a cap on how much money one can make. That's not what we're saying, but we do want to make sure that those that are in some of our lower paying jobs are paid a minimum livable wage. So this is the time of year where you're in the political season, and we're talking about taxes and who should pay more and whether or not we're paying enough, and who's paying too much and who's not paying enough. And so this comes around the distribution of income. Once again, it's not about taking from someone and giving it to someone else. It's just making sure that everyone is paying their fair share. And our tax code is written in such a way that it does allow people like Donald Trump and others to get around from paying taxes, from large corporations from paying taxes. After you make a certain dollar amount, you no longer pay, you don't pay any more taxes because you've reached your limit for the year. For some people, that's in 6 months. So they're not paying any more taxes after that. So that's something to consider. Is that fair? Is that equitable? I don't know. And so we have one of the biggest wealth gaps in the world between black and white in terms of income. It has been proven that a black man and a white man, the same background, same everything, same degree, same experience. The white man would generally probably make about $20,000 to $30,000 more than the black man with the same experience, same education, all of it. And then there are even some cases where a black man, woman, might have more experience, more degrees, and still make less than the white person, specifically the white male. So there's some inequalities there. What does social mobility mean? The extent to which people move upward or downward in income over life. So we have class conflict, the well-to-do upper and lower classes, conflict over wealth and power. You have class consciousness, an awareness of your position and a feeling of political solidarity. So that means that most rich people believe the same way about their money and having access to it and whether or not they pay too much taxes. And most poor people or people in the middle hang around people that feel the same way about their stuff too. So you tend to associate and be in political agreement with those in your same class. In America, we say we have middle class values, and we might used to, but I don't think we do anymore. That's just my opinion. When it comes to that, politicians have to have the pulse of the people expressed by what we do. So if politicians really want to know how we feel about something, they should watch how we vote, because that's where they really find out if we're protesting, if we're running for office, if we're writing them letters, if we're calling, if we're demonstrating. So I go back to the killing at Sandy Hook and what happened there, and that at that point it was like 85-90% of Americans wanted something done with guns and gun control, but those in power felt like it was okay. The Senate wouldn't do anything and the House wouldn't do anything, and they were both ran by Republicans, and they were friends with the NRA. So nothing ever happened, although a huge majority of Americans believe that something should have been done. Same thing has happened in this year with all the protests around George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and the list goes on and on of the amount of black people that have been killed by police unarmed. It should tell the politicians that something needs to be done as it relates to police reform. That doesn't mean police reform means defund the police, but it definitely means let's move some money around. Just yesterday or a couple of days ago in Philadelphia, a family called because the son was having a mental health crisis. They told him he was having a mental health crisis. They asked, when the police get there, they asked him to drop his knife. It's a knife. They ask him to drop his knife. This is a black man, and he doesn't. And so they end up killing him. Well, it's in situations like that, are the cops really the best people to call? Well, what you're concerned about as a mother who sat there and watched her son be executed, basically, is the safety of your child. And so you're wanting him to be safe. And you would think, I don't know how you think that now in 2020, but you would think that calling the police to help you, that's what they would do. and you're standing there asking them, please don't shoot my son, and they shoot him anyway. So we've protested, and our politicians should understand at this juncture that a good portion of America is concerned about what's happening in our communities on a day-to-day basis. So what is public opinion? Distribution of individual evaluations on a given issue or a candidate. Everybody has an opinion about Donald Trump, good, bad, or indifferent. You have an opinion about him. You have an opinion about Joe Biden, good, bad, or indifferent. You have an opinion about John Cornyn, who is running for your Senate seat in the state of Texas. And you have an opinion about MJ Hager, who is running against him in the state of Texas. You have an idea about all these people. So you have to decide where they fit into your spectrum. Do they share your same values? And you have to ask yourself some hard questions about what your values are at this point. How do you find out how people feel? You do random things. I know by now everybody's probably gotten a survey on their phone. That's how they do a lot. They do random testing. That's how they figure out what's important to people. Consensus, as you know, that means a good percentage of the people agree. So as I stated, it was like 85-90% back when Sandy Hook happened, the killing at the elementary school, that people wanted change. And so that was a consensus, that was a large issue. Polarizing issue, when a large number of people are divided over an issue. That's where we are right now. We're still divided on what to do with police reform, police brutality, criminal justice. So you have some that say, whenever it happens, they always look to the victim of what happened to the police. Breonna Taylor, she was asleep. The person they was looking for was already in custody when they knocked on her door at 2 o'clock in the morning. Actually, they didn't knock because they had a no-knock warrant. So they busted into her home at 2 o'clock in the morning looking for some drugs that was not there because she's no longer with that guy. And yet everybody want to talk about, well, the boyfriend she has now is a drug dealer. And no, he wasn't. Them shooting at her 30-some times and hitting her body 8 times, somebody should be held accountable for that. And you know who was held accountable? One person. And you know why he was held accountable? Not for killing Breonna Taylor, but because he put a family that was on the other side of the wall where a gun went through in jeopardy. And that family just happened to be white, mind you. But for killing Breonna, no one's been held accountable for that. For George Foreman, the police officer's knee was on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. He's been bonded out and able to leave the state because he fears for his life. Well, how do you think George Floyd felt? I'm sure he feared for his life too. And so those are the polarizing issues. Abortion is still a polarizing issue. Gay marriage is still a polarizing issue. Healthcare is still a polarizing issue. I'm not sure why, but it is. So when they try to gather opinions, they'll do what's known as a straw poll, and that's unscientific. And if you think about it, a lot of times when they still do landline calls, and most of us don't have a landline. I do, just because I'm old, but most people only have cell phones. And so, which is why they're going more towards sending out text messages and putting surveys on social media sites to try to get an idea of where the public stands on certain issues. Sometimes they can do a survey and it's done too early in what's going on, so they don't get a real good sample. People don't always respond when you ask for a survey. I know that's a big problem in our education system. And so they don't get enough responses back to really to have a good idea of how the majority of people feel. A lot will happen. You hear a poll every single day, every hour on the day during election season, especially right now when we're less than a week away from the presidential election. There will be a poll from everybody. I always ask, who are they calling? Because I never get a call on a poll to ask who people are voting for, what the numbers are saying, or what the numbers normally say. And a lot of times the polls are inaccurate. I don't trust any of them except for my own poll that I do with my friends because I've asked some specific questions to all of them. And so, but these other polls, I don't trust them. So I don't trust any poll out right now that has Joe Biden winning or losing. I don't trust any of them because they're not perfect. and they're not always accurate. And who are they talking to? They're talking to the same people that's at home, which is usually elderly white people who still have a landline. So that's who they're talking to. There's something called agents of political sophistication. And what does that mean? Who are you politically influenced by? Your first one is your family, because that's who you know first. That's your first social agent. And your parents pass on their ideas to you, and then you decide once you get older whether or not you align with your parents or you might not. The mass media, that's another one that has an influence on our political ideas because of television. Now everything is on the internet. How the presidential candidates are on all kind of late night talk shows and podcasts and all sorts of things. Our schools, that's another one that has an impact on our political ideology. What's taught in school, respect for the nation. We have the Pledge of Allegiance. Everything builds on each other. And so the more education one receives, so they say, the more likely you are to vote. College helps students think critically. So you should be thinking not just about what you heard on Fox News or what you heard on MSNBC or CNN, but compare what you're hearing on those networks and see where the discrepancies are. And then you make a decision based on what you know to be true. Social variables also have an influence. Class and income. The less income one makes, they say you tend to be more liberal. The more income you make, they say you tend to be more conservative or Republican. Middle class usually splits the vote between whether or not they vote Democratic or Republican, depending on probably their life experiences. Your ethnicity and race plays a part. If more African Americans tend to vote Democratic, more whites tend to vote Republican. Hispanics are somewhere down the middle as of late between voting Democratic and Republican. As are Asian Americans. They tend to be down the middle at this point as well. The less religious you are, so they say, you tend to be more liberal. I disagree with that, but that's what they say. Republican Party has often touted themselves as the party of family values, and which is interesting for them to have supported a man like Donald Trump who doesn't have any family values, in my opinion. His having several children outside of his marriage and all sorts of things. I'm not real sure how he became a standard bearer of family values for a party. So when you think about what this is, our political culture, you have to know where you fit, who's influenced you, where you're getting your information from, so you can make informed decisions. Because in the next chapter, we're going to talk about voting. And you can only make an informed decision if you do your own research.